rapport, the extraordinary rapport with the big apex predator, the sharks especially. And one of the downsides in the advent of all of the shark feeding, which is enormously popular today. All divers want to see sharks. All divers used to be afraid of sharks. Now sharks, the great fear shibboleth, has become familiar. They watch the feeding. People who are watching are not molested by the sharks. As you watch with Lucy and Scarface, it is carried off very well. Only the feeder is quite frequently, especially with the Caribbean sharks, by mistake, grabbed on the arm or the wrist, and they wear chainmail gloves for that part. But the other side of the coin is that thin barrier between the predator's instinct evolved over all those years that has still allowed him to find a safe rapport with a human diver, but under circumstances can trigger an attack. I think the simile for it was what happened in Las Vegas a couple of years ago. Remember when those two German chaps who worked for years with the Bengal tigers make millions doing it, and one slip of their routine, and one was almost killed by the tiger. And years ago, when I was working with Bob and Dinah Halstead in Milne Bay in New Guinea, and Bob was the one who coined the word muck diving. They go way back to the beginning. And Dinah had built up a routine of hand-feeding silver-tip sharks up in the northern part of Milne Bay, always carried off to the great pleasure of the diving guests who were shooting it with high 8 and a still camera then. And one of the guests shooting with the still camera, rather with the high 8, caught a real attack as it occurred. It's the only piece of footage that I have. I've never filmed that myself. And he loaned me his original, and I use it as a postscript to one of my videos about the feeding today to show what can happen. And what happened was this. Dinah had repaired her wetsuit with the knees that were wearing out with white repair, so that she had white on each of her knees. And when, as I have it in that high 8 video that the guest shot, the shark came up, made his turn, came in to take the bait from her hand. Remember, you just saw the nictitating membrane that drops down like a shade at that last second of biting when the shark protects his eyes from the flailing of a prey. And what must have happened also at that last second, the shade dropped, his aim hit the white which attracted him at that last moment, and so he bit over her knee, the jaw closing on the calf and the thigh. Released, turned in 1 second. This was a 7-foot silvertip. Turned in 1 second, came back with his mouth open, and Dinah, who was carrying a Mykonos and a strobe in the other hand, turned at the same second and thrust it into his mouth as he came in, and he turns away with the strobe dangling, shaking his head, with a much longer arc around, and her husband Bob and one of the other dive guides come in with billies, pushed him off, and they got her out of the water. It is a very fortuitous example of what can happen. I wouldn't wish it to happen while I was shooting, but I was glad to show it, to show that other part of what people take for granted. And I'm sorry that so many thousands, tens of thousands of divers, sport divers, have watched the shark feeding with impunity and thus come back with the idea that, hey, they aren't so bad. You can just punch them in the nose, maybe, if you're getting in trouble. And that's what I was referring to about the other side of the coin, although you very rarely have a chance to show it. As I say, it's nothing pleasant that you'd want to stage for while you're shooting.